Have him show his birth certificate.
the
It's
issue's
as
not-
simple as that.
But the issue's not
None
even...
of this talk about it, just let's see the birth certificate.
Yes, for the past well over a year now, the court system has essentially been not dealing with this case on the merits regarding Barack Obama and the eligibility issue. I'm sure you're well aware of it. You're an attorney, I believe?
Yeah.
Yeah, since we were talking about the Constitution, I'm one of 300 million. You're one of 435. What's going on here? Where are the Republicans? I've studied this issue from August of '08, and there's something extremely troubling on a very, very fundamental constitutional level. I'm concerned that the rule of law in the Constitution is basically going to be irrelevant if this issue is not resolved. And it seems like the politicians, obviously the Democrats, but unfortunately, I think almost all the Republicans in the House and in the Senate have avoided this issue for, I don't understand why and what's going on here, but I'd like to know what's being done, because the rule of law is going to be, you said about things being unconstitutional. I mean, if this issue stands and is not resolved, I think the people are going to have zero confidence in the system. And every poll has been indicating that there is 30–40% of the electorate at this point, maybe more, who have genuine concerns about something as fundamental as whether this president is in fact constitutionally qualified to be in that office, and what's being done about it.
Well, it sort of goes back to this gentleman's question.
How you talking off the bridge?
You're talking about that comment. But where the courts are, and you're probably more of an expert than maybe some other folks here, as far as it has been challenged in several judicial proceedings already, and the ones that I'm familiar with have not been.
Well, they basically, the consensus has been essentially that they were saying that it was obviously lack of standing. Now, the most recent federal California court ruled that there was no standing, and it's a political issue that the Congress needs to deal with, that should work its way through the political system since he is already a sitting president. Now, prior to this, the federal courts were ruling that it was an issue regarding standing. They took it as a case that should be dealt with in the courts and said there was no standing. So there's a lot of conflict here. It keeps going back and forth, and the bottom line is, like I said, there's probably 30, 40, maybe even a higher percentage of the U.S. electorate who is genuinely concerned that this person is not eligible to be in that office. And what is being done about it?
You sort of answered your own question there with regard to the political. If it's 30 or 40, let's say 40% that has a concern about the issue, and then it's purely a political issue, 30 or 40 is a minority.
No, but in terms of I mean, you as a congressman are sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution, the same way the president is.
Sure.
And it seems, like I said, I'm one of 300 million. You're one of 435. What's being done, and why is everybody avoiding this issue to this extent?
I think in part because it was originally going through the courts, and generally speaking, on this matter and a whole host of other issues that come into our office, constituent calls and other things. When they're in the court system, 435, 535, when it's in the Senate, allow it to go through the judiciary.
Well, how about prior to? I mean, but before that, it was even.
Well, before that, it was an election. It was an election.
But it just seems like nobody in the political system, meaning in the House and the Senate, has any genuine concern, at least publicly, about this issue, without throwing it back and forth and coming up with 50 or 60-page opinions of why there's no standing. The bottom line is that you have tens and tens and tens of millions of Americans who have very valid grounds for thinking that there's a problem here.
I'm sorry, please feel free to stop by our office and come a little further, but I know we've just got room for a few more minutes, and I know there were a few more hands up in the air.
So what's the, I mean, this is a...
Yeah.
Put it under the table.
Obviously there is no political solution to it, even if the entire Republican party was unified on the
Have him
issue.
show his birth certificate.
But the
It's as
issue's not-
simple as that.
But the issue's not even...
None of this talk about it, just let's see the birth certificate.
I agree.
But why doesn't anybody, nobody in the...
Let's try to switch to some of the healthcare questions. Sorry, yeah.
Have him show his birth certificate.
But the
It's as
issue's not-
simple as that.
But the issue's not even...
None of this talk about it, just let's see the birth certificate. Have him show his birth certificate.
the
It's as
issue's not-
simple as that.
But the issue's not even...
None of this talk about it, just let's see the birth certificate. Have him show his birth certificate.
the
It's as
issue's not-
simple as that.
But the issue's not even...
None of this talk about it, just let's see the birth certificate. Have him show his birth certificate.
the
It's as
issue's not-
simple as that.
But the issue's not even...
None of this talk about it, just let's see the birth certificate. Have him show his birth certificate.
But the
It's as
issue's not-
simple as that.
But the issue's not even...
None of this talk about it, just let's see the birth certificate. Have him show his birth certificate.
the
It's as
issue's not-
simple as that.
But the issue's not even...
None of this talk about it, just let's see the birth certificate.